Think your life is tough? Missed your morning coffee? Wi-Fi acting up? Your office AC too cold, or your favorite cafe out of oat milk? That's cute, because if you lived in medieval times, your biggest problem wouldn't be a slow internet connection. It would be surviving until sunset. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where pain was constant, death was always nearby, and modern comforts, they didn't just not exist, they were unimaginable. You're not just living without luxury, you're battling filth, disease, superstition, and social cruelty at every turn. Let's take a brutally honest journey through what one average day might look like if you were unfortunate enough to wake up in medieval Europe. Let's start with your most sacred place, your bathroom. Or rather, the place where your dignity dies. Modern plumbing, flushable toilets, not even in dreams. If you had to go, you'd probably reach for a chamber pot, a simple bowl you did. Your business in. If you were lucky, you'd have one under your bed. Once filled, you, or your servant if you had one, would toss it out a window or into the street. In cities like London, people dumped waste right into the streets, where it ran in open gutters. Some cities had laws allowing waste to be thrown only after dark. But imagine walking below a window at 10:01 p.m. and getting hit with a flying bowl of human waste. That happened. Frequently. And the smell? Rivers like the Thames turned into open sewers. Historical records describe it as a monster of stink, churning with human excrement, dead animals and rotting food. The water was so polluted it could actually bubble from the methane. If you were nobility, you might use a garderobe, a medieval toilet that emptied directly down a shaft along the outer castle wall. But even royalty couldn't escape the stench. It lingered, always. Toilet paper? Dream on. If you were rich, you might use wool or hemp. If you were poor, moss, leaves, straw, or your left hand, and then rinse it in the same bucket everyone else used. Infection? Constant. Now meet the real unsung heroes, gong farmers. Their job? Collect and transport human waste from cesspits, latrines, and public outhouses. Imagine shoveling congealed excrement every night, loading it into a cart, and hauling it outside city walls. These men worked only at night. They weren't allowed near marketplaces or public fountains during the day because of the unbearable smell that clung to them. Yet ironically, they were well paid. Some earned as much as 4 times the average laborer. Still, social isolation was brutal. No one wanted to sit next to a gong farmer at church. Let's talk about your job. Spoiler, it sucks. Most people in medieval Europe were peasants, serfs bound to land they didn't own, working for lords who treated them like tools. Your day started before sunrise. You'd stumble out of bed, maybe, grab a crust of stale bread and head straight to the fields. No tractors, no machines. You plowed with wooden tools and oxen. You sowed seeds by hand, bent over for hours. Harvest season? You worked 14-16 hours under the sun, slicing wheat with a sickle, risking heat stroke and injury, and you didn't own the food. Most of it went to your lord. You got a tiny share, barely enough to survive. Starvation was just a season away. If a storm destroyed crops, too bad. If disease hit your animals, too bad. If war came through and torched your fields, you guessed it, too bad. No labor unions, no weekends, no breaks. Think farming's beneath you? Try these. Become a blacksmith. Hammer iron all day, inhale smoke and sparks, and risk burns. Or become a tanner, turning animal hides into leather by soaking them in vats of urine, lime, and dog feces. The smell was so foul that tanneries were usually placed far outside town walls. Some jobs were even worse. Link boys, usually children, were hired to carry torches at night to guide wealthy citizens, but they were often attacked, robbed, or killed. Pure finders, yes, this was a real job, collected dog poop from the streets to sell to tanners. Your wage, 1 or 2 pennies per day. That might buy bread and ale. Rent, clothing, forget it. Forget toys, cartoons, or playgrounds. Childhood in medieval Europe was not a time of joy. It was training for survival. By age 7, most children were either working in fields, tending animals, or apprenticed to a craftsman. An apprenticeship meant years of unpaid labor in hopes of one day mastering a trade. You'd clean floors, carry heavy tools, and endure frequent beatings. If you were a girl, you started learning domestic tasks, cooking, spinning, washing immediately. And by 12, marriage was a possibility. By 14, motherhood. Education, rare. Literacy was for the elite. Most kids never saw a book. Let's say you get sick. Bad idea. No one knew about germs. Disease was blamed on foul smells, bad luck, or spiritual punishment. Cures? Terrifying. Got a fever? You'd be bled, literally. A vein sliced open to drain the bad humors. Or you'd be covered in leeches. Some treatments recommended applying dozens, up to 70 at once. Toothache? No anesthesia. The tooth was yanked out with pliers. Infection? Hope your priest was nearby. Even childbirth was deadly. 1 in 3 women died giving birth. No hospitals, no painkillers, just screaming, praying, and hoping. Then there was the Black Death. Bubonic plague killed up to 60% of Europe in just a few years. Cities became ghost towns. Entire villages vanished overnight. Food was survival, not pleasure. Peasants lived mostly on pottage, stew made of oats, water, and a few vegetables. Bread was the staple, but even that was dangerous. Rye bread often contained ergot, a fungus that caused hallucinations and convulsions. Meat, a luxury. Eggs, rare. Cheese, only in small quantities. Fruit, seasonal and scarce. Water was too risky to drink, so even children drank ale. But don't get excited. It was weak, just 1–2% alcohol. It was safer than water, but it tasted awful. Malnutrition was common. Rickets, scurvy, and pellagra were widespread. You could literally go blind from vitamin deficiency. You smell. Everyone does. Bathing was infrequent. Most people believed that hot water opened the pores and let disease in, so they avoided it. Public bathhouses existed but were often seen as sinful dens of temptation. Soap was expensive. Toothbrushes didn't exist. People cleaned their teeth with sticks, rags, or ashes when they remembered to. Tooth decay, gum disease, and halitosis were standard. Lice and fleas, constant companions. Parasites burrowed into your skin, clothes, and bedding. People wore the same tunics for weeks. Some believed that changing your clothes too often could actually make you sick. Break the law. Welcome to the medieval justice system, a terrifying blend of torture and superstition. Petty theft. You might be whipped or have your ear cut off. Repeat offender. Off with your hand. Accused of heresy or witchcraft. You'd be tortured until you confessed, regardless of guilt. Trials often involved ordeal, holding hot irons or dunking suspects in cold rivers. If you survived, you were innocent, but most didn't. Public executions were a spectacle. Hanging, beheading, drawing and quartering, it was all done in public squares to send a message. Your home? A thatched roof hut with a dirt floor and no windows. Peasant families slept in a single room, often with their animals. Beds were straw-filled sacks crawling with insects. No chimneys meant smoke from cooking fires filled the home. In winter, you froze. In summer, you sweated. Mold, mildew, and rats were constant. Your house was more survival shelter than living space, and forget privacy. The entire village probably heard everything that happened inside. The medieval church dictated everything. What you ate, who you married, how you lived, how you died. Missing church could get you punished. Speaking against a priest could land you in prison, or worse. Heresy, burned alive. The church owned vast amounts of land and demanded tithes from even the poorest peasants. A full tenth of your food or money went to the clergy, whether you could afford it or not. Your fate wasn't just in God's hands, it was in the churches, and they didn't. Always play fair. Medieval warfare was the stuff of nightmares. Battles were up close, gory affairs with swords, axes, and arrows. Armor was heavy and suffocating. If wounded, you probably died of infection. But worse than battle was siege warfare. If your town was besieged, you could be trapped for weeks or months. Food ran out, people starved, disease exploded, some sieges ended in cannibalism. Yes, historical records confirm it. When walls fell, it was slaughter. Women were raped, children killed. Survivors enslaved. There were no rules, just chaos. Still think you could handle medieval life? Still want to be a knight or a princess? For 90% of people, life in the Middle Ages was an endless loop of pain, filth, disease, and fear. Romance novels and fantasy shows forgot to mention the moss, toilet paper, the lice in your hair, and the stench of death around every corner. So next time you complain about traffic, a slow download, or burnt coffee, remember this. At least you're not living in a shack, wiping with leaves and sleeping next to a goat. You wouldn't survive one day in medieval times. Enjoyed this brutally honest ride through medieval misery? Smash that like button, subscribe for more historical truth bombs, and comment below. What's the one thing that would have made you tap out by lunchtime? Until next time, where history gets uncomfortable.